Next this evening here on LWT, meet the Masterspy.
Hello, I'm Andrew.
Hello, I'm Lisa.
Welcome to episode 61 of
Round the Archives.
It's a bit shorter than usual.
It is, yeah.
Must be the cold. But there's no harm in that, really, is there?
No.
So we've got 2 articles
Yes.
for you this time.
We have.
But we've still got 4 voices.
Yes.
So that's good, because it's obviously you and me, Lisa.
Yes.
I suppose you could say this time our theme is unusual game shows.
Yes.
Could you say that?
I would, yes.
Go on, say it.
It's unusual game shows.
Thank you. So to kick off, Paul and Toppie will look at a couple of shows, starting off with
The Adventure Game.
Many light years away, on the far side of the galaxy, in a region often visited by time travelers, lies Arg, a small planet of little consequence. Naturally, the inhabitants of Arg get a bit fed up with trippers and tend to discourage them. Often they will even nick the essential crystal off their time machines and hide it.
Hello, Round the Archives people. It's me, Paul the Shy Yeti again. I've got Toppie Smellie with me. Say hello, Toppie.
Hello, Toppie.
Well, before we start talking, I shall introduce the topics we're going to be talking about, or the 2 shows we're going to be talking about. Now, I was asked by Andrew and Lisa to choose 2 sort of quiz-related shows or sort of contestant-related shows that I thought Toppie would not have seen anything quite like it. And I don't tend to watch that many shows that are sort of studio-based, sort of quiz-type shows like that. Oh, I have, but they're not sort of ones that have lasted with me. But the 2 shows, however, that did influence me when I was growing up were a show called The Adventure Game, which was a sort of sci-fi. I don't quite know how to.
Yeah, sci-fi adjacent.
Yeah, I will talk about it in more detail. But the other show was a show called Treasure Hunt, which is less sci-fi, more helicopters. But do you want me to? I'll just give you a few facts, Toppie, just to set the scene.
Yeah.
So the Adventure Game ran from 1980 to 1986, although it wasn't on every year, and actually there was only 4 seasons and only sort of like 22 episodes produced in the whole thing. I think when I was a kid, it felt like there was a lot more. But and actually, sadly, 1 or 2 don't exist anymore, or they only exist on off-air recordings that people made at the time. But luckily, there was over here a DVD set of all of the episodes that they do have access to.
Mm-hmm. Was it popular?
It's hard to tell from the position I was. It was certainly popular for me, and for a lot of the people that I'm friends with. I guess my generation, as kids, watched it and enjoyed it. And the episode that I pointed you towards a couple of episodes, and then one of them vanished, or at least vanished when I tried to watch it. But I think I sort of pointed you in the direction of season 1 episodes, which isn't necessarily the season that I remember. It did each season did sort of adapt, slightly change, or they changed the types of challenges that the cast were. Usually it was a couple of celebrities and a member of the public. I don't know if you really got that because you wouldn't have recognised the celebrities. Did that come across?
It did, but I did not know who they were. But it registered to me that you would know these people that were participating.
Yeah, and then I mean, one I watched had a person called Leslie Judd, and she was on a program called Blue Peter, and it was an episode where And the other person was a guy called Paul Darrow, who was in Blake Seven, which you probably heard us mention.
I have.
Sort of 70s, early 80s sci-fi show. And then the third member in that episode was just a member of the public, as far as I'm aware, and very, very vocal and quite irritating. But I would have liked to have shown you an episode from later on, because the episodes that you saw, there was that sort of load of shapes across the floor that they have to cross.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and then at the end of the episode, when they're leaving, they have to cross again, and then they don't succeed, and they get evaporated. Well, in the later seasons, they're more over like a vortex, or it's made to look like they're crossing a sort of intricate sort of board that's hovering over space, and then they take a move, and then an electronic sort of beam takes a move, and the viewers can see that, but they can't see it. Yeah. And then, so you can see, are they getting close? It reminds me of the show on Netflix, Squid Game, all the different sort of, I mean, that's a fictional program. Well, I guess so is the adventure game to a point, but the games that they play on Squid Game remind me of a sort of slightly more sadistic version of the adventure game. But
yes, indeed. Yeah.
But I remember, like as a kid, the bit when they were crossing the board at the end of the show with the beam, and were they going to walk into the beam and get evaporated? Was like that's sort of like water cooler TV from my generation. But
I could see that.
But yeah, it's funny to think there were so few episodes. But
well, let me ask you if this is true, because I only saw 2 episodes of this, but I did notice that. Because when I was watching the first one, I said, "Boy, this is quite an elaborate set. If they have to construct new sets like this every episode, that's a lot of money, first of all, and a lot of time and creativity." But then I saw the second episode, and they used some of the games were the same. For instance, that floor exercise was the same, and then they would intersperse new original things. So then I could see, oh, okay, that's how they did it. They reused certain games. So is that true that you would have seen that floor game in pretty nearly
the floor
every
game
episode?
The floor game was, I think, although as the seasons went on, I think that perhaps was substituted for the end game with the vortex. But yeah, certain things were repeated. But I'd kind of forgotten that this in my head, and maybe it's later episodes, there were more like, you have to get to this room, and then you solve that, and then you go into another room. Maybe there were more rooms or more things, whereas in the episode that I saw from the first season, in which you saw, there was that little bit at the beginning and that little bit at the end, and then most of the episode was set in one room, and they were so like, and that number equals that, and then because of that, then the colour red does this, and it was like, I was like, wow, they're supposed to solve this. It's almost unsurmountable. But
I had questions myself about, all right, how much of this is real, and how much is them really figuring out anything. And I have a feeling it was quite guided, and although they're clearly ad-libbing, there's no script for the most part. This show must have been heavily edited, because they had to fit it into whatever, a half hour, whatever it was, or less, 25 minutes.
It was a bit longer, actually. Well, the one I saw was, and I'm not sure whether that, I always thought it was about a sort of half-hour show, but certainly the one I saw with Leslie Judd and Paul Darrow was more like 50 minutes. But whether that's what it was, and I've just kind of concertinaed it a bit in my mind.
Well, I can imagine like them taking like 30 minutes to solve one puzzle. And of course, they're not going to show those 30 minutes. So anyway, it's very interesting and entertaining, but did leave me wondering about, it left me wondering just the way I wonder and hypothesize about today's so-called reality TV shows, that basically the producer's there, and he's the puppeteer, and he's making things happen, and then there's a whole lot of editing. And this show certainly seems to me to be a forerunner of reality TV, don't you think?
In a way. I mean, what I like about it is that it's like taking a format or a quiz or a sort of, I mean, it's a bit more complex than just being a quiz because it's more.
Oh yeah, it's much
natural
more
thinking and all that sort of thing. But it just makes me think. It's a bit like with something like Dark Shadows, taking a soap opera format and then kind of, oh well, we can have. Doesn't have to be just about people falling in love. Or it can be, but they're werewolves. It's like pushing. It's making something a little bit different from taking a format, but making it different. And this is sort of doing the same thing, but for the quiz format. In that, it could have been very dry, or it could have just been right. Stick some people in a room and get them to solve these problems. But putting the whole thing about them being in space and the humor and the costumes and the dragons, and it's just so much more interesting to me than would I have watched it if it just been men in a room. I'm not sure. I don't think I would have.
Yeah.
I'm not that age anyway.
True. Also, I noticed the other way they help move things along is that they have people that come into the room to offer clues, and they're helped.
Yeah, and also I noticed because they sort of took a couple of them out to do some other little thing with some swinging bits of rope, which also allows for them to edit other stuff, or who knows what they were saying to the others in the other room. Like, come on, we need you to get moving. So it did allow for editing. So as you say, you don't quite know what you did and didn't see.
Yeah. The other thing about this kind of thing is that there's a very popular thing in America. I don't know if you guys got it over there or not, but today there's a very popular group activity that's done live on location in some place, and they're called escape rooms. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I've heard of escape rooms. Yeah.
Well, that's what the show was. You got to move from room to room, and they don't let you into the next room until you solve a riddle or a puzzle. That's an escape room. I would love to know if someone was watching that show and said, this would be a fun thing to do live, and perhaps, at least in part, it's how modern day escape rooms originated.
When we talk about Treasure Hunt, I know that was a format that was picked up, a French format that the UK picked up, but as far as I'm aware, the adventure game was conceived by somebody working for the BBC, so it wasn't, or certainly it's not sort of credited that they took the idea from another country or another. But the adventure game did sort of inspire a show called The Crystal Maze, which was more in the 90s, I think, and that was sort of solving problems and getting crystals and things. But I watched that as well, but I don't think it's quite as eccentric as the adventure game.
Mm-hmm. And well, that's another thing is there's just a bit of role playing, and you could also say, well, this is kind of how groups do. What do they call it? Frapping, farthing. Anyways, where people enact fantasy shows. Yeah. But anyways, there's a bit of that to it as well.
It's I was in wondering if there was anything like the adventure game you'd seen like at the time, like not. Yeah, we can see how there are things that remind you of in today, but I guess there was
nothing that was on TV. No, this is completely no. We never had anything like this in America, and that's I got to say, when TV first started in America in the late 40s, when shows were being produced in various cities, because that's how it worked. A station, somebody would get together the money to start a television station, and they broadcast. It was no cable; it was just a broadcast signal, and there was some in New York City, there were some in Philadelphia, there were some blah 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 all over, and they all were responsible for filling the air with their own stuff. Way back then, there was creative things going on, okay, and they were creative, they were interesting, and then American TV became lawyers, crime fighters, westerns, and there were game shows, but they were all kind of the same. I mean, most of them were like, you've got to guess this word or guess what's behind the door, and you know, there you are winning cash money and prizes because, well, you had sponsors. Anyways, inventive TV just vanished from America, whereas in Europe and in Japan, and they kept being inventive.
If you sort of think about it in a way, the adventure game was never on like mainstream. Like it was on BBC Two rather than BBC One. BBC One was normal mainstream. BBC Two was able to get away with the more sort of weird. I'm sure things like Monty Python started on BBC Two. I might be wrong, but
I don't know. There's just clearly, to me, at least as an American, having been exposed to shows like Gilligan Island, you know, I mean, as beloved as they are, they're insipid, and they, you know, you had your sitcom, you had your hour dramas, and for a long time that was about it. And it every once in a while you'd see something completely different, like Battle of the Network Stars.
yeah.
But there wasn't really I can't say there was a lot of inventiveness. So, anyways,
it is kind of weird because when you look at that, as I say, there was only 4 seasons of it, and you know, it almost looked, you sort of feel that that they'd sort of forgotten about it. So I was just going to look at the actual dates. Yeah, so there was a first season in 1980 with 5 episodes. Then they sort of forget about it for about a year and a half, and it comes back for another 5 episodes in 1981. And then they forget about it for about 3 years, and it comes back for 6 episodes in 1984. And then forget about it again for a couple of years and do another 6 episodes in 1986. So it does span quite a few years, but you know, there's no sort of continuity, or, you know, I don't know who they think was watching or whether they really cared. But and it does look like the episode, which is another weird thing which you wouldn't get today, is that like the episodes in the first series range from being about 26 minutes long to being 45 minutes long. And I think that's one of the ones that I watched, was one of the longer ones. And then the next season, it's sort of, oh, well, we better make it 45, all of them 45 minutes. But they do jump around in length. And it's weird to have a TV show that had such a weird time. You know, it's like they, especially with the first season, they haven't sort of, you know, how on earth that fitted into schedules, I don't know. 37 minutes is a very odd length for a TV show. But then those were the days. BBC Two was probably more of a channel that could cope with slightly more, you know, less structure.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, in America, well, we developed what became 3 major networks. The end. Period. You know, there was sort of like, as I mentioned, rather rigid. You know, here's what a show is. It's a Western, or it's a police drama, or it's a quiz show, or blah 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 blah. But interestingly enough, once again, when a certain amount of independence came around to television because of cable, basically cable allowed people in New York to watch Atlanta's big station by Turner. I can't even remember what it was called, but anyway, TBS is what it was called. And there was a superstation, they called them, in Chicago, and they did some of their own programs because they were different and there was some money there. And that's when syndicated shows or shows that were on these superstations you started seeing more invention again. Like, for example, American Gladiators. It never would have been something a network would show. It took someone independently to start thinking, well, what else can we do besides the stuff you find over at the 3 networks? And, you know, you start seeing that invention again, but it's interesting to me that it returns when there's a certain amount of independence. Like, we are not part of these corporate television stations. This is something else, and we do these things that are different.
I think I was going to say all of the seasons, but actually not the 4th season. But as far as I can tell, I have dates here for the first 3 seasons, and all 3 of those first 3 were repeated, and sometimes they were repeated in the year between seasons. So I guess, when you're that young, you're just like, oh, Adventure Game's on, and you don't, if you weren't sitting there with a video, you might have seen it before, but you only have seen it once because you wouldn't have videoed it because it's a little bit although around that time I think my dad did hire a video, but it was still quite a rare thing to have. So, but that's sort of the repeats sort of cement in a little one's mind. You don't really care if you've seen it before. It's just if you like it, it's just good to see see it again. And also that it was very weirdly scheduled. It says that the first season was shown on Saturday mornings, so there were other things on Saturday mornings on other channels. So I don't know, which were actually meant for kids. So I don't know who was watching on a Saturday morning, and then it was repeated mid-afternoons on a Saturday. Again, you're out off downtown or something on a Saturday afternoon. The time I sort of remember, it was more like BBC Two, like early evenings. I don't know what they mean by it. Early evenings, but it was after school anyway.
Okay.
But it was a very weirdly scheduled show, and also as we said, sort of just weird that they would take so much time off between seasons. But I don't think it was a show they wouldn't say it was something that it was priority for them, but it's certainly something that stuck with a lot of people.
Yeah. And is there today anything like it or reminiscent of it?
Well, the only things that I know of are the things like Crystal Maze, but they've come and gone and come back again and gone again. So I wish there was more. I'd probably watch more. But going on to the other show, Treasure Hunt, that ran from 1982 till 1989, and then it came back for a couple of years in the early noughties. And I watched it enthusiastically at the time, and then I also watched it very enthusiastically when it came back. And there were a lot more episodes of Treasure Hunt than there are Adventure Game. There were 91 episodes in all. But
was this also BBC Two?
No, this was Channel 4. But Channel 4 is sort of a similar type of station to BBC Two, or it was in that it kind of had more. Something like Queer as Folk was on Channel 4. More experimental, more slightly less mainstream shows tended to be on, like comedy shows. But it's a station in its own right. It's not whereas BBC Two is part of the BBC. Channel 4 is a channel on its own, and it started about 1982. So I'm not sure if this was one of the first shows that they showed on there. But Channel 4 was also responsible for introducing me to things like The Avengers and Lost in Space. And at certain times they would show old TV as well as having new programming. And it was a very, I hardly watch anything on Channel 4 now, but in the 80s and 90s it was like, and BBC Two as well, were the place that people went to watch things.
Now that you said that, I'm really curious. Now, what is it about Channel 4 today that you just don't watch it? Is it just because of availability of streaming?
No, I just don't know what's on there that I would want to watch. It's not. It's a bit like, I watch Neighbours on Channel 5, but if they axe Neighbours, then there won't be any reason for me because that is what I watch Channel 5 for. There's nothing else that is of interest to me on Channel 5 other than my Australian soaps. I think a lot of channels hope that you come for one show and you'll stick around for the next one, but past that sort of age, I come to watch something particularly, and then I've got plenty of other things I need to watch. I can't be hanging around all night sort of thing. But I don't know. I just don't know what. I couldn't tell you a single show that's on Channel 4 now, but I'm sure, but back in the 80s and 90s, it was an essential channel.
Now that I think about it, that's the same as me. If you ask me what programs were on ABC, CBS, or NBC, I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. Those were the stations I watched growing up, but I certainly don't watch them anymore.
So I wouldn't have seen probably the very early episodes of Treasure Hunt, but it went long enough that it became an essential sort of. I just love the fact it wasn't, although it is partly in a studio, the fact that every week you're jumping in the helicopter and going, to different parts of the UK and in later seasons overseas.
Mhm.
And the episode that I think I pointed you to was set in the Highlands, and that was quite a random episode. I don't even know if I've only seen that episode before, but I mean, I think Annika Rice, who's the lady who does all the running around, don't think she had done TV before, but I don't think she'd done a lot of, that was quite a big jump, I think, being on that show. And then she jumped to being on a really mainstream BBC show called Challenge Annika, where it would be like sort of, build a school in Ethiopia with this much money in 3 weeks, sort of thing. I mean, that's just an exaggeration probably, but it was that sort of thing. So it was kind of the stuff that she led to Treasure Hunt, but times 10. But I love Treasure Hunt as much for the locations and
well, let me ask you, because I didn't see enough of Treasure Hunt to really understand how it was made, but there was the in-studio stuff, and then, as you say, there was the on-location stuff. And my question, I'm wondering, is, were they actually live out there doing the on-location stuff?
Yeah.
And they weren't pre-taped, or
I mean, they weren't shown live, but they were recorded live. So
so they were seeing it in real time in the studio.
Well, they weren't seeing anything. That's the thing. They were hearing. Oh, they could hear.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah.
But so in a way, it's quite it's quite ahead of its time in that they were in a studio and talking to somebody, right up another part of the country or the world. That sounds like a very now thing rather than 1982, but so sort of ahead of its time. I mean, I was in the episode that I watched. They found one of the clues at a Scottish dance. They found one in a castle. There was one which was just gobsmacked me totally. It was the clue was a man like on a mountain, hanging off a mountain, and the air rescue people stuck Annika in a sort of thing that I can't think what it's called, like a bed.
Like a rescue cage or whatever.
Yeah, and winched her down, and then she had to take it from me. And I'm like, I can't believe what they're making her do just to get a clue. I mean, in that episode they didn't succeed, but I thought it was a little bit unfair because the last clue, the penultimate clue, the last clue was on a boat, so they reliant on a man rowing them out onto the boat and then having to row them back, and all of the time the clock was going, and I was thinking, well, come on, they should have probably had an advert break, and at least, because they do that sometimes, to if they need to go in a slightly different location or it's too far to. I was thinking, well, they probably should have, because they only said as the game progressed, they said that they were just a little bit behind. They were, but that was a lot of time, all that rowing.
So there was a chance element to the show because things may not work predictably, like there was, and they just have to deal with it.
Or they could have directed them to the wrong place, or they think they've got the right clue and find that they're looking for something. In fact, they've got slightly wrong, and that could make time slow things down. I remember a while ago, a year or two ago, I watched a few of them on another YouTube channel, and there was one where they had to, because it was like I think it was an overseas one, and they had to go to a temple, and so they couldn't park the helicopter that close, and she had to run, but then the helicopter was swooping up loads and loads of sand, and she was just keeping on running, and I was like, I mean, I love Wonder Woman, but Annika Rice is like Wonder Woman times 2. She is just, nothing seems to faze her, and she just keeps on going.
I bet she has a lot of stories. I bet she could tell a lot of stories about being on that show.
Yeah. And I read today she does she does a bit of stand-up comedy these days. She's in her early 60s now, but.
So, was it your impression that, ultimately this show would have been put together and edited, but it too must have, I mean, they're certainly just not to go on and on and on if people aren't guessing right, or, they're just like not getting it or whatever. There's got to be some shaping and editing to it.
Because there was, they had a strict time with that.
Oh, they did.
They had the 50 minutes, and if you were going wrong, then I mean, I've seen plenty of episodes where they've achieved it, but I've seen plenty of episodes where they've missed it as well.
Okay.
And the one that the one in the Highlands, they missed it, but and I can't see how they could have done it. You know, they would have needed between 5 and 10 minutes, I would have thought, to have got the last clue, but they had to get to the location, find out what they were looking for.
And did Treasure Hunt also use a mix of celebrities and regular people, like real people?
I think only occasionally would they do it. I think there was reference, because that was the 1987 episode, and Anneke Rice did it from 82 to 88, and then somebody else came in for a year. I thought her episodes were perfectly good, but what they didn't, they stopped after a season or so with her, and then brought it back with somebody else, like about 2002, 2003. But yeah, so there's reference in the episode, the Highland episode, that I don't know whether it was for charity, whether it was just a one-off, but it sounds like they'd done an episode where, because the grey-haired man is a guy called Kenneth Kendall, and he was had been known for being like a newsreader, and there's a spiky-haired lady called Wincy Willis who was the helper lady in the studio, and she had been known as being like a weather girl on a morning TV show. So it sounds as if there'd been an episode where Anneke had been in the studio with, like the roles reversed. It was generally members of the public that I remember, but it inspired me so much that when I was either late primary school or around the time of sort of being 11, 12, whatever, I used to do treasure hunts in my village. So I'd go out and I'd put the clues around the village, knowing a friend was coming over that day, and then we'd run around the village doing I'm not sure how much they were into it, but I was really like, so here you are today, and we're going to be doing this. And I've been putting them up trees, and a lot of my friends were from the town, and it's amazing how 3 or 4 miles makes a big difference. When my friends Harry and Robin used to come over, they always turned up in their best shoes, and I'd be like, well, we're obviously going to be running around in some mud because me, and I always found that there was a big difference between the people who lived in Salisbury compared to what we were prepared to do living in the village, climbing trees and jumping over barbed wire fences, even sort of making camps and all sorts of things. Just we're a little bit tougher in the countryside, I think. But I don't remember anyone ever telling me I will not be doing your treasure hunt. But I was we didn't have a helicopter, but I was definitely inspired.
That's neat. I love that. That's fun. We had what I always thought of was a family game, because I don't know what my father was inspired by, but one day my brother and I were very young, like I would have been 4 and maybe he was 5, and we were playing around with our toys, and we found a note in one that was very cryptic, and it said, "To find the secret prize, look under an owl." And what's this? There was no explanation. We had no clue what it was. Well, my father had left all these clues around the house on pieces of paper that he hid, and so we'd finally find the wax candle owl, and there'd be the next clue. And I'd totally forgotten about that game until you just described what you were doing. And but we never went outside. This was an indoor game.
Well, it says that Treasure Hunt was based on a French show, which I won't try and pronounce the title of, but so it was sort of. I've never seen it. I would be interested to have to look on the internet. There must be some French episodes on there, but I was just looking. Apparently, it says that Anneke Rice left the show to have a baby and was kind of planning on coming back, and then they had the season with the other girl in, who was supposed to be kind of like just filling in, but then it never came back. And Anneke Rice never came back because she went over to the BBC to do something else. But there was another show around this almost as soon as Treasure Hunt finished called Interceptor, which only lasted for 1 season, and that was sort of like, I think that was that was exciting as well, because that was out and about, and contestants being chased by a baddie who was trying to sort of stop them from achieving their goal. And I haven't seen an episode of that for years, but I remember really liking it and being really disappointed when it wasn't continued. I'm sure there weren't that many episodes, but I just find it broke me as far as, you know, going back to a studio and watching some people doing a quiz in a studio with a studio audience after I've watched the adventure game in Treasure Hunt. I'm sorry, you've raised the goals for me, and now you're kind of expecting me to go back to giving me a steak, and now you're expecting me to eat bread and dripping. It broke it for me, but you know.
Yeah, these shows might have held my attention. Not might have, probably would have, especially if I'd seen them at that time.
Well, anyway, I'm glad we could discuss these two, because I thought they'd be quite different, and yet you can see how they kind of inspired things in a way that are more modern. But certainly in the 80s, they were quite different to what was on the TV.
Yeah, absolutely. They're fascinating to see today for me, because there was nothing like them in America.
Many thanks to Paul and Toppie for that.
Yes, thank you, boys.
Paul, of course, can be heard on the Show Life podcast, and Toppie on the Smellcast and Matinee Minutia.
Yes.
Now, before we move on to our article, we have exciting merch news.
We do,
Isn't
yes.
that right? We have merch.
We have merch.
Didn't
is.
Merch used to work for the Addams family? Rose, don't walk all over the keyboard. She's excited.
She wants to buy some merch.
She wants to buy the merch. You nearly did, actually. Because Martin Holmes,
yes,
of Vision on Sound, has done us not one but two books of his cartoons.
He has, yes,
that he did
in colour.
In colour, of course. Well, so close you can feel their fire. Is that right?
Yeah.
So go to lulu.com and search for Martin Holmes.
Yes.
And you should be able to find the Round the Archives cartoon collection in 2 volumes.
Yes.
Along with his wonderful Nosferatu the Dancier.
Yes.
Is that how you say it?
Well, I think it's just dancer.
All right. Dancier is spelled with a Y.
Like vampire.
Like vampire.
Yeah.
So Martin's got 3 books out.
He has, and they're bestsellers.
And they're in the charts already. This is shocking, isn't it?
It is.
But they're all wonderful.
Yes, buy his books.
And yes. I'll try and put a link in the in the blurb below, because every episode of this comes with a bit of attached blurb. It apparently.
Does. Blurb.
And we might even do a video. We haven't done a video for ages.
No, we haven't. No.
But there you go. But to round off the issue, you and I will take a look at
the Masterspy.
Good afternoon, Lisa.
Good afternoon, Andrew.
Now, you do like your game shows weird, don't you?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's nothing better than a weird game show, is there?
But until very recently, we had no idea how weird game shows could get.
No.
Because we'd never seen The Masterspy,
We hadn't, no.
You're probably a bit too young to remember it.
Yes.
I might have seen it, but
You
I have
have
no
done.
recollection of seeing it on original transmission whatsoever.
No.
I think Warren did mention it once or twice in passing. But given that, again, a lot of it is missing,
Yes.
it was a nice surprise when a number of episodes have turned up on YouTube.
Yes.
Now, apparently these are from William Franklin's VHS copies.
Yes.
And there is so little information online about the Master Spy.
Yes.
And what information there is sometimes not very accurate.
No.
That we can only go from what we've seen, basically.
Yes.
And I don't think we've seen everything, because rumour has it one does exist on its original tapes.
Okay, right.
And I'd be interested to see.
Yes.
But it runs 1977 to 1980. Mm-hmm. You've got William Franklin as... What is he, M or the Major? It depends, doesn't it?
It depends what episode it is. In one of the early episodes, he's referred to as M. Yeah. I think the James Bond production team might have got a hold of it.
Might have had a word.
Yes, and after that, he's referred to as the Major.
And who is he helped by? Jenny Lee Wright
Jenny Lee Wright as the inscrutable Miss Moneypacker.
Is she inscrutable?
Well, I don't know. She has terrible trouble with some of her words.
Does she get scruted very often? I've never seen it happen. But we've zoomed through them and zoomed through them again, haven't we? Yeah. It's like It is like Whodunit, because you can watch it over and over again.
Over and over again, yeah.
And still get amazed at how bloody odd it is.
Yes.
But, yeah.
Yes.
But we did two, didn't we? Mm-hmm. So we did the Nautical Novelties Rangefinder Run-In.
Yes.
We should point out that the titles on YouTube are sort of... Can you say made up? I don't know, really.
I'm not sure they were given titles at the time, so this is somebody's interpretation of what the story is about.
And you've got to call them something, because you can't just keep putting...
well, not if you don't know...
Master Spy.
What episode
or when they're from.
Yeah, so you need... If you knew it was like episode 3 of series 3, you could put that, but I don't think you do, so you have to put a title of some kind.
It's difficult, but yeah. This one, you've got 4 special agents in a sort of very cheap pre-title sequence thing.
Yes.
Are they stood on podiums with I think so. Backlighting, aren't they? And they've all got big hats and coats on, haven't they? Because they're spies.
They're spies, yeah.
And we start off with 4 agents, and 3 will be eliminated, and 1 will be the Master Spy.
Yes.
Then you get the title sequence, which is a bit sort of... Is it like sort of Inspector Clouseau sort of thing?
Possibly, yeah.
Because you've got William Franklin, you've got some spy bloke, and some really weird swirly patterns.
Yes.
And then this like fizzy bomb trail goes across the screen.
Yes.
And William Franklin does all sorts of mugging to the camera, doesn't he? And then he puts his fingers in his ears and it explodes. Mm-hmm. This one, we start off with some... It's always like black and white film, isn't it? That somebody's taken.
Yes, it's sort of done on the tube.
And there's a couple doing some shopping, but apparently they're agents for Anarchy International.
Yes, which is the sort of this world's version of sort of like Spectre or something.
Yeah, I love the idea though that an organisation that's sort of in favour of anarchy have like given themselves an overall title, because if you were a true anarchist, everybody would call themselves something different, wouldn't they? But,
and they'd all argue about what the right one was.
But it's mostly based around the set, which has got the Master Spy computer on it, and William Franklin's desk, which moves about,
which zooms off,
like he's the celestial toy maker, isn't he? Shall we talk about the typical contestants?
Yeah.
Because the first one on this one is a computer specialist who's 30 who likes backgammon, and I just put posh.
Yeah, he wasn't actually that posh.
Compared to some, he's actually not that posh.
No.
There are some right sort of snotty sorts, aren't there?
Yes.
Who've like sailed around the world when they were 17, and I'm never really on board with them. Am I?
You get a little bit cross sometimes. Too.
So there's quite a few sort of upper middle class sorts, but. Yeah, it also says 30, and sometimes you go, well, he's not 22, he's about 45, isn't he?
I think it's some of the hairstyles.
It's that 70s thing about everybody...
Looks older than they are.
Yeah, looks a lot older. But Bill Franklin sort of does a sort of interview question thing, doesn't he, at the start?
Yeah.
And he comes up with odd scenarios. And it's like a really weird job interview where you've got to sort of improvise an answer.
Yes.
Yeah. Isn't one of them about, what if you were arrested dressed as a vicar looking through a window with a pair of binoculars?
Yes. That's in the next episode we watched. So.
That is in this one. What if you were found with a body in the boot of your car and it was banging to get out? You'd say it was your wife.
A person, not a body. Yeah.
A live person. then there's this sort of like they've always got something to do, haven't they?
Yes.
Something practical.
Yeah.
So in this case, you had to type on a typewriter where the keys were doctored to give the wrong letters.
Yes.
So if you typed madam, it would come out civic. And if you typed refer, it'd come out as solos and all this
Yes.
stuff. Then you have to work out what you'd need to type to write a word. And it's quite difficult.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff, especially under studio lights. There's another one that's an engineering student, so he's the one asked about being a vicar.
Yes.
There's another one that's a civil servant. And another one that's a computer operatives consultant. So in terms of diversity, more generally than this episode, you've got somebody who's from Goa.
Yes.
And I like the way he corrects Bill Franklin to say, I'm not Goanese, I'm Goan.
Yes.
Because he's a Goan graphologist.
The Goan graphologist. It's quite hard to say.
But yeah, you do get a fairly decent
You do.
bit of representation. You get some ladies for Bill Franklin to
Have a look at.
smile and wiggle his eyebrows at.
Have a flirt.
And have a flirt.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get it's pretty good actually.
It is.
And even what's he described as a Romany traveller at one point, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I was trying to think the last time anybody described themselves as that.
I don't think you would even see that now.
On telly, what was it you said? He looked really 70s, didn't he?
Yes, he's got a sort of really 70s haircut and clothing, and he's the epitome of 70s.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but marks for diversity
Yes.
for who's actually involved.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine what the audition process is
Yeah.
for this?
I can imagine it's quite torturous.
Yeah, because
sometimes.
you get fed up with game shows these days because they seem to pick the right, really dim people, don't they?
Yeah, I don't quite know how they get on there.
But
it's like, if they're the best, how bad were the worst?
But the people you get on here are mostly pretty good.
Yeah.
There's there's the occasional oddball, isn't there?
Yes.
Including one really weird bloke. But,
Yes.
But there we go. So we get this sort of interview thing at the start, and then the desk just buggers off, doesn't it?
It does.
It just sort of zooms off to the side.
Once Bill Franklin's got up from it, I have to say.
Yeah,
he doesn't shoot off with it.
Shoot off sideways.
Yeah.
And there's a circuit diagram for a rangefinder, and a photo of it is in the Bosnovian embassy. And there's this couple, what is it, Frank and Laura Cookson, who are these agents, and they're running this nautical novelties.
Yeah.
Nautical as in, like, boats, not as in naughty bits.
Yeah.
Depends what sort of nautical novelties. And they're involved with this spy ring. And so the agents have to infiltrate with a cover story that they're naval historians.
I'm not quite sure what naval historians have got to do with nautical novelties.
I don't know, really. But
yeah.
Then we go into Mastermind, don't we?
Yes.
With the naval history quiz.
Yeah.
And I guess they've had a week to swat up, haven't they?
Yeah, it says, I think she says 2 weeks. But
yeah. And you get 5 points for a right answer and 1 point for a wrong answer that you answer confidently.
Yes.
How you measure confidence, I don't know. And there's a light bulb over them as well, like they're being interrogated in the dark.
It's weird because there are episodes, even though it's dark, if because the next contestant will sort of move, because they've got a sort of seating area for them, haven't they? And the next contestant will quite often move. It's very distracting if they've got a light coloured sort of outfit on, because you can see them moving in the darkness like a sort of little ghost in the background.
But I just wrote cut price Mastermind, so one gets eliminated.
Yes.
Should I say that again? One gets eliminated.
Yes.
And for his troubles, I've forgotten who it was now, but they get a pocket calculator.
Yeah.
Which has got a clock with an alarm for time all over the world. You get a load of right tat you get given, don't you?
Yeah.
Some of their favourite things include like sort of super 8mm film cameras and binoculars with radios in them.
Yes, you get really cross at the binoculars.
Yeah, either have some binoculars or a radio. Don't have bloody both. Anyway, so that's the end of part 1. Part 2, there's a photograph and a mathematical formula, and it's Nelson's column taken from an unusual angle, isn't it?
It's basically somebody's laying on the pavement, filming, looking up at the bottom of the column.
Then we get another film, and they've put a bugging device on the phone, haven't they?
Yeah.
Which they've nobbled already, because you can't actually hear what they're saying.
No.
So a bloke turns up to this couple's house in his car, and they sort of they get this sort of paper. Is it the circuit diagram or some sort?
Yeah, blueprint.
Yeah, but our bugging and observing here is foiled when they draw the curtains.
Yes.
So that's like really rubbish, isn't it? Then they have what I've described as the adventure game with an extra 50p spent on it. When they've got this metal box with some wires and a balloon.
Yeah, it's like a cash box, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like I used to have one when I was younger. I kept my money in it. It's sort of until you lose the key.
Yeah, but it's wired up to 10,000 volts. I like the way Jenny Lee Wright says, "Mind your tie on the 10,000 volts."
Yeah.
When the bloke leans over it and nearly gets a shock.
Yeah.
And they've got to like sort of get this balloon and deflate it, then stick it in a hole and blow it up and lift up the thing.
Yeah, and get the key and unlock the box. As long as the box isn't on the base unit, so the circuit isn't completed.
And I put, don't bugger it up because we can only afford one balloon.
Yes, basically. Yeah.
And then the inside they find ASDFGL, don't they?
Yeah.
ASDFGH, which is part of the row of a typewriter.
Yes.
Now this dates it because I guess typewriters were about, but although you've got like computer people involved, none of them seem to recognise that's the letters on a keyboard.
On a keyboard, yeah.
So the next one's eliminated, and they get binoculars with a twin zoom, an electronic twin zoom lens on it. Woohoo! So the remaining two agents are then flown by helicopter.
They're not really. It's
just stock footage over London, past the post office tower.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
That pops up a lot. The post office tower.
Yeah, and then Bill and Jenny Lee Wright communicate with the communications console, which has got like a couple of black and white TV screens in. Somehow they like have to hack into cameras to see what these people are up to, and they have to do an actory bit, don't they? There's not much acting in this one, actually, because they don't interact so much, because they go to this office and then the woman just goes off.
She does.
Yeah. Allowing them to spend... They got 3 minutes to find the microdot. And the thing is that the one of the agents has to go, and if they cock it up, the other one has to take over,
they keep swapping. If any time one makes a mistake, they swap back to the other one.
So, yeah, the bloke has to do the thing with the balloon again, and he nearly overinflates it at the moment, because it swells over the top, doesn't it?
He has to let a bit of air back out, doesn't he?
And then on the typewriter, he types QWERTY, and it comes out as Nelson.
Yes.
And I said, that's a bloody loud typewriter.
It's really loud.
Why doesn't the woman next door hear?
Yeah, it's like clonk, clonk.
I like Bill Franklin's thing where he's very tentative opening the desk. It's not an exploding desk.
Yeah.
They can't afford that.
No.
Then on one of the envelopes is written Robert Trebor. Because it's the same backwards as forwards.
Yes.
A palindrome, Eventually they find a picture of Nelson, and the woman's excited because he's got two arms. And in his left eye is the microdot. Yeah, so she gets binoculars with a camera as the second prize.
Yes.
And he gets a multi-wave global radio receiver.
Yes.
It's just a radio, isn't it? It's a radio with a big aerial. It must eat up batteries. So yeah, that one's odd. But we soon went on to the Asylum Affair.
Yes.
Which is a complete off-air recording, it appears to be, complete with the adverts and trailers for Kidnapped and Tales of the Unexpected.
And the start of Kidnapped.
And the start of Kidnapped. I noticed that the first thing on there is an advert for Bounty, and I said, notice William Franklin recorded the whole of the Bounty advert, but we suspect he might have had it on timer record. We don't know. Or he just liked Bounty advert. Yeah. And we saw Frank Windsor.
Yes.
Advertising cigars.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there's also, what is it, a cooker thing that can do anything it can cook anything that starts with CH.
Yes.
Chicken, chips or chops.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and the Muppets go to Hollywood as well.
Yes.
There's no pre-credits on this one.
No.
Because it's all a load of people that have been on it before coming back.
Yeah.
Now, Bill gets to do a bit of acting here because he's staring out of a window, isn't he?
Yes.
And his shirt's undone for the ladies. He's down to about the third button, isn't he?
It's quite a long way.
Did you have a good look, Lisa?
No.
All right. So there's this professor who's asked for political asylum. There's this professor who's asked for a political asylum. I don't know where you live in a political asylum, but he's a professor of space technology, and they've got a bug under the phone. It's a dirty, great thing. The phone would be all wonky if you stuck it under that.
It's not even a working phone. It's just like, because everybody keeps picking it up and the receiver doesn't come off. So that dates it as well.
But yeah, Bill interviews the professor, and this one is a bit more whodunit, isn't it?
Yes.
Right, then the agents have to talk to the professor's wife on the phone in French. It does help if you can speak French at this point, doesn't it? They've got a phrase book, but
even so, if you don't speak French, whoever's providing the voice talks quite quickly in French. So if you don't speak French, you're going to find it very difficult.
And you have to ask things like, how many minutes does he like his egg boiled? And I just put eggs is runny. Because it's only 1 minute.
Yeah, that would be uncooked. Yeah, surely.
And so the three agents I've written down are Geordie one, Snotty one, and one who's got a karate wife. Because apparently she can do karate. There's no evidence of this.
No, that's what he says.
And what side of the bed did he sleep? The right-hand side. So there's this colonel at Anarchy International as well. They've got people all over the spot, all over the place. Who's camped outside the United Kingdom Rocket Research, and he's doing some painting and having a picnic, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. He's got big binoculars, which apparently can see a fly at 50 yards. And I just wrote down, how big is the fly? There's this really arty bit as well where they've made a ladybird walk over a bottle of wine.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a stunt ladybird.
Yeah, they must have had to catch a ladybird and put the ladybird on the
and
bottle.
tell the ladybird, could you walk along the bottle? And then we'll film you. And the ladybird goes, all right. So they have to work out whether the professor is also the colonel. And the colonel has his watch on his right hand.
His right wrist.
Yeah. And in this phone call bit, they have to work out what an allégé is.
Yes.
And you can't really speak French, Lisa,
no.
But I think you worked out what an allergy was.
It's an allergy.
It's an allergy.
Yeah.
And now they've got another funny photo, which looks like a mountain. I thought it was.
Yeah. Bill Franklin refers to it as the Rock of Gibraltar.
Yeah. Well, the adverts, by the way, were for milk and square crisps.
Yes.
Then some old bloke wanders in.
Yeah, and I'm still confused about this.
And you just said, is he a real person?
Or is he an actor?
And I just wrote, well, he is a real person. Oh, something fell over. He is a real person. He's not an android. And apparently he was at this place where this photo was took in 1938, and he had nice strawberries. And this turns... They have to ask him a load of yes-no questions. Yeah. And he turns out to be a professional person. Which has got nothing to do with it. Yeah. Who was head groundsman at Wimbledon in 1938. Yeah.
But was he?
Well, I don't know. Is he a real man?
I don't know.
And everybody got Wimbledon throat and lost their voice because of the dry weather.
Yeah.
Now, apparently the professor played at Wimbledon and had bad eyesight.
Yes.
So these idiots have now got to be Fleet Street correspondents, haven't they? Oh God! Now I don't know what to say about the next bit. And honestly, please watch this bit on YouTube because you will fall off your chair. We sat there with our gobs open, didn't we?
Yeah, I've seen it 3 times now,
and you still don't believe you've actually seen it.
It never gets any better.
As to prove how much they know about tennis, they have to watch 3 rows of weird puppets, rotating their heads and vibrating. Yeah. Because they're pretending to be the crowd at Wimbledon watching the match going on.
Watching Jimmy Collins play Ilya Nastasi.
Why that makes a difference, I don't know.
And you've got the sort of sound of the match, but you can...
But these puppets, what the bloody hell are they?
I don't know.
Were they on other programmes at the time? Did they go around...
I honestly don't know.
Was there some bloke that operated them? And just turned up at TV studios and said, I've got some puppets you can use?
Yeah. If anybody watches this and they recognise them and they know where they're from, can you please let us know?
But what are they? There's 2 sorts of boy puppets.
Yeah, one with sort of ginger hair and one with dark hair.
Yeah, what looks
and the one with dark hair's got like a dirty face.
Yeah. And they've got googly eyes when their heads rotate. One looks like its head's going to fall off.
Yeah, it's all wobbly.
And then the girl ones look like Heidi.
Yeah, they've got
plaited hair.
plaits. Yeah. and sort of weird pointy hats. It sounds astoundingly, ridiculously weird.
And it goes on too long as well.
It does. It's just them moving their heads from side to side, supposedly watching this tennis match.
And most of what I wrote down at this point is just a lot of swearing. So I can't read I can't read that out. So one agent gets eliminated, and I said, you're well out of it at this point, mate. Yeah. And he gets a scientifically designed solar wristwatch, which is the best way to have time on your hands.
Right. Apparently never has to be wound up.
No. They go off to interrogate the professor.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, it's more of an interview than an interrogation.
And establishes true identity by asking questions. Yeah. Oh, God, that snotty git is really snotty.
He's very snotty. If I would think if the actor playing the professor wasn't getting paid for it,
I would have lamped him at this point.
Yeah, it's very rude.
We say Wimbledon, not Wimbledon.
Yeah.
You funny foreign boy.
Yeah.
So there's clues, like he's got his watch on the left hand and he takes his specs off and things like this.
And apparently he can't see anything without his
and I cheered when the snotty one got it wrong.
Yes.
Though he looks like he's going to argue with them at some point. He looks so surprised that he could be wrong.
Yes, he really looks like a bulldog chewing a wasp at that point.
But the allergy turns out that he has a rash.
Yeah, he's allergic to eggs, but he's eating the eggs they provide anyway.
He eats the bloody eggs, even though he's allergic to them.
Yeah.
Weirdo.
Yeah.
and he apparently was scratching all the time. But I
wasn't paying attention to that.
What's the prize? A combined all...
Can't read your writing.
I can't read it. A combined all-wave radio stereo cassette recorder for the snotty one.
The snotty one, and then the other one, the actual winner gets the binoculars with a camera on.
Binoculars with a camera in again.
Yeah.
And I put job lot.
Mm.
And Bill says goodbye, and then a trailer for Tales of the Unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
And the adverts are Shandy Bass, Coffee Mate, Banjo, Castrol GTX, and British Airways.
Yes.
But my God, that puppet thing just puts it in a whole new league.
It does.
I mean, there's other weird bits in it.
Yeah.
Because you've got this thing where you got Agent X comes on.
Yes.
There's somebody in disguise.
Yeah, so basically it's an excuse to get a celebrity of the day.
Some vaguely famous person.
And dress them up in a disguise and have the contestants try and guess who it is.
Which they sometimes immediately see through.
Yes.
Like Raymond Baxter doesn't even get it. He's on there 2 seconds.
Yeah, he's like, oh damn, I put a moustache on and everything.
Yeah. Who else is on there though? Shaw Taylor.
Yeah.
Judith Chalmers,
Katie Boyle, and some motorcycling man.
Yeah. The motorcycling man, there's this weird bit where they have to sit on a motorbike.
Yeah.
And then there's some back projection of some
front
film.
Projection for them.
Front projection of film. And they have to wobble about on this motorbike pretending to ride it.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah. And the audience
what the hell that's about? I don't know.
And the audience find it hilariously funny.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going on about.
I like the bit with hiding the cassette in the beer.
Yeah.
They've got a load of glasses of beer.
And they're just like, oh God, no, that's too light. Can't put it in there. One of them ends up putting because I got one, I think it's like a stout or something with lager.
Yeah.
And
if it's dark enough, you can just about hide it. There's another weird bit where they're in a library and there's this agent moving about in the library represented by a light.
Yes.
And they have to move their light.
Yes.
And it's like the slowest game of Pac-Man ever.
Yes.
There's a similar one, what was it, with a ship or something.
Yeah, and they keep driving it over
They keep
ground.
driving the ship on the land.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think, oh God, there's some poor prop person behind there with a torch, slowly dragging it up.
There's an exploding bomb at one point because they've got to defuse a bomb, and it really goes off. It goes off really loud, and everybody looks a bit shocked. Yeah. But unless somebody can prove otherwise, I think we found possibly the weirdest game show we've ever seen.
Yes. Yeah, even
not a complaint.
No,
not a complaint. Yeah. I'm all for, telly being
oddness,
odd.
Yeah. I mean, even beats 3-2-1, and you have to go some way to beat someone 3-2-1.
You've got some interesting guest stars. You've got Edward D'Souza.
Yes.
Linda Bellingham.
Yeah.
Who's the bloke that dresses up as a sailor and goes into a toilet and comes out as a woman?
Hugh Walters.
I don't know
how they do that. They must have locked off and filmed again because he goes in one toilet and comes out the other side.
And David Jason.
Yes.
And This is the weird one,
Yes.
isn't it? The guy that we said who was the Romney Traveller
Yeah.
is in the episode with David Jason, and the guy's surname is Penfold.
It is, yeah.
And you go, okay, that's
just a bit odd.
that's weirdly weird.
Yeah.
You get these photos of the people at the start as well. They've
Yeah.
had to fill in where they come from.
Yeah.
And there's one woman that says she comes from Salop,
Yeah.
although by her handwriting it looks like she was born in Sheep. Is she the same woman that's got the Servalan haircut? I can't remember.
I think so.
But there's somebody
yeah.
that's come as Jacqueline Pierce from Blake 7.
Yeah. Very short hair.
Yeah. But that haircut might well have been in by
It
that.
possibly was. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, do seek this out because it is bloody weird.
It's
isn't it?
wonderfully odd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we just better say about the Masterspy annual,
Yes.
haven't we?
Yes. So it's
You always like getting
Yeah.
merchandise.
I do. This is one of the odder pieces of merchandise.
So, yeah, this is an authorised edition. Oh, it's from ATV, we should say.
Yeah.
But you probably heard because I probably put the jingle in at the start.
Yeah.
But copyright ATV Network 1980. Mm-hmm. And who did the annual belong to?
Paul.
And he's done some drawings,
He's done
hasn't
a bit of doodling. Yeah.
He's doodled all over Patrick McGowan.
Doodled over
Why you've
Patrick-
got Patrick McGowan in
It's
there?
basically somebody's just gone to like the
All the producers at
the
ITV
ITV archive
give us
and-
some photos.
Yeah.
Have you got a photo of like Wurzel Gummidge we can stick in?
and McGowan
Because it's an
and-
extended quiz book, basically.
Yes, yeah.
Although apparently it does teach you how to make a false nose at one point.
And there's a sport bit and
But yeah, rather
Yeah.
than have real people in it, you've got some pictures of Bill Franklin and Jenny Lee Wright,
yes.
and they've got 4 characters that they've drawn that are taking part. So you've got Mr. Montmorency Pole Perrott of Twittering Hall, much twittering, who's interested in mole vaulting and underwater skiing. Mrs. Ethel Sludge of Railway Cottages, Gastown, a housewife and expert chip fryer. Alf Boggs, who lives in a fully furnished hole in the ground and was All England Chuck the Welly champion until he retired in 1979 owing to a strained brain. And young Simon Smarty Boots, who looks like Jacob Rees-Mogg, it has to be said, and his ambition is to be Prime Minister by the time he's 12. Oh, is Jacob Rees-Mogg there? But it's just a quiz book,
Yeah.
and that's all it is.
Yeah. But it's really weird because they've obviously had to get William Franklin and Jenny Lee Wright to pose for the cover.
Yeah.
And she's got this sort of fur coat on, and I'm like, oh, I don't even understand that. Unless it's a picture from one of the episodes.
And the little spy bloke from the title
He's
sequence
green.
is green, and
Yeah.
he's on William Franklin's shoulder like a parrot.
Like a parrot, yeah.
What's he looking at with his magnifying glass? Is he looking down?
Yeah.
He's looking down her dress, isn't he?
He is, yeah. From the angle, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but there you go, the Masterspy.
Yes.
Please seek it out.
Yes. And if anybody's got any more to upload, please upload them.
Yeah,
to,
and
to
if anybody
YouTube.
at home has got recordings
Yeah.
beyond the ones that are known to exist, please return them.
Yeah, or just upload them.
Oh, yeah, because we
I
would
don't think anything
we would
would
love
worry.
to see. But yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I don't often say this, but if people can find some more of these,
Yes.
we'd be eternally
We'd
grateful.
like to see some more, for sure.
There you go. Well, that's the episode over and done with, Lisa.
Yes.
Shorter than normal, perhaps,
Yes.
but
yes. Little mini episode.
yeah. But thanks to Paul and Toppie for their
Yes.
help with this
For
one.
their article.
And do we have any idea for episode 62?
I think we might be.
You've got half an idea.
Yes.
But yes, thank you everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next time, whenever that may be. Bye-bye!
Bye.
Thank you very much for being with us, and we hope you'll join us next week for another assignment of The Masterspy.
That was episode 61 of Round the Archives.
Starring Lisa Parker, Andrew Trowbridge, Paul Chandler, and Toppie Smellie.
On the musical side, you heard Dan Tate and Paul Chandler.
The scripts for The Masterspy were by Agent X.
And the producer was Ronnie Taylor. But first of all, Paul and Toppie will take a look at a couple of shows. And our theme this time is, I guess... We keep going so I can cut it out. But this time around, Paul and Toppie will look at a couple of shows that are shitty shit. Shitty shit. They are shitty shit shows, aren't they? They're really shitty shit. Rose is eating.
I know.